Hello again. This week's show is called Debunking Smedley. America Right Orders the Community of Nations. What I'm doing with a number of these talks is debunking lies that have been told about America. When you actually dig into the record, you'll find out America is doing and has done many, many good and beneficial things for the world. And I believe last week or the week before, I did a show concerning American relations with the Native Indians or the Native Americans or the American Indians. And there's a lie out there that we committed genocide against them. That's just simply not true. We did not do that, and I lay that out. Today, I want to talk about Smedley Butler and the American world order, which is right order, that we started promoting at the end of the 1800s. The reason I'm talking about Smedley Butler is because there's a quote of his I'm going to get to in a little bit, which is used, it's made a meme, and it's used by a number of people who hate America. And they use this meme to attack Americans. So you see, America is just about money and big corporate interests. And that's really not true at all. And I'm going to show you why that is not so today. In the late 1800s, America wanted peace. After the frontier closed in 1890, that's the official date of the closure of the frontier, America and our elites wanted peace. We wanted world peace. We were looking at and reaching out to the rest of the world to work with them to develop means by which disputes could be resolved through arbitration or some other nonviolent means. At the end of the 1800s and into the early 1900s, that's not the way the Europeans were. The Europeans wanted war, and they kept building up their armaments. They kept building up their navies, their armies, their big guns. They kept going into Africa and other places and establishing colonies to strip the raw materials, all of which, is not moral or right. Because what they did is they went for these resources for their own benefit. And that'll be a topic for another discussion. What you and they did it for an empire. And so what you have is you did have some European leaders come to understand, we got to do something about how we at least fight wars to make them less inhumane. And so that's what developed in the late 1890s and in the early 1900s. Americans were deeply involved in that. But in general, we did not want war. We do not want war. We did not go out to build an empire, economic or political or otherwise. We were developing the continent, our part of North America. We were developing that and complying with the principles of providential destination and also civilizing influence of the peoples who were here, the tribes who were here. And we did that as a way to bring peace and right order to this part of the world, to our country. We took these ideas and then brought them to the rest of the world gradually and then in greater speed and intensity, if you will, from the 1890s on. We know, of course, about the Monroe Doctrine in 1823, which was to keep tyranny and empires out of this part of the world. We know that the Monroe Doctrine was a way to have people promote self-rule, but this is where it got to be a problem. The Spanish really harmed, almost destroyed the ability of the peoples of Latin and South America to live in harmony in a civic society, in a civil society as we have here in the United States. And so what you had is you had a situation where you had a lot of fights over power, a lot of internal revolutions, overthrows, a lot of bad stuff going on, a lot of disruption in society. Rulers became tyrannical for long periods of time. They gathered all the wealth and power to themselves. They just simply did not rule properly. Okay, and this is something that was, the result of centuries of tyrannical authoritarian rule by the Spanish. America understood the importance of right ordering society and making it so that government served the people. We've always believed that. That's always been a part of who we are. It's in the Declaration of Independence. It's in the U.S. Constitution. It's our ideals. It's what we have always striven for. Haven't always reached it. Had some problems, but we always know that the ideal is there. We're not about creating empires where we grab land and rule it like Russia. We expand the wisdom and the benefits that we have and that we have discovered on other people. And sometimes they take it, and sometimes they don't. So this is what happened with the Spanish American War, as I told you a couple of weeks back. You had a situation where Spanish government was basically destroying the Cuban people. They claimed there was a rebellion, and so they were putting people in concentration camps, and half the country or large parts of the country were really just laid to waste by the Spanish government. At the same time, these actions by the Spanish government affected the international order. It affected U.S. commerce, U.S. relations. It affected other countries. And there's an old saying that international problems have their origin in domestic societies. In other words, disorder in domestic societies leads to disorder in the international community. America knew that. And we stepped in, excuse me, we stepped in into Cuba, and we righted that situation. We fixed that situation, just like we did with a lot of other countries in Latin America. Now, let's get to Smedley Butler. Okay, Smedley Butler was a Marine Corps Major General. He was born in 1881, died in 1940. He was in the Marine Corps from 1898 to 1931. He got 2 Congressional Medals of Honor. A while back, I read the citations of those Medals of Honor. I mean, it's pretty impressive. The guy led from the front. Very brave. I don't take that away from him. He was in the Spanish-American War. He was in the Philippine-American War, Boxer Rebellion, which was in China. The Mexican Revolution and World War I. He was called Old Gimlet Eye because he just had the ability to perceive things, be very insightful, or so it seemed. Because what I'm going to talk to you about is he was really not very insightful in the comments that he made. And as I may have said earlier, he made some comments in a magazine in November of 1935 that have been turned into a meme for the purpose of saying that America, it's really all just about business and it's just about crushing people for economic gain. And that's unfortunate because that's a total lie. And what I want to do is I want to show you that he was actually wrong about what he said in this article that's been turned into a meme. So the article was called Common Sense, November 1935. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read it. I should have it right here. Let's see. And let's see. I thought I had it here, but here it is. So what he said was I spent 33 quote I spent 33 years 4 months in active service as a member of our country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all commissioned ranks from a second lieutenant major general. During that period, I spent most of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer for capitalism. Thus, I helped make Mexico and especially Tampico safe for American oil interests in 1914. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for the National City bank boys to collect revenues in. I helped purify Nicaragua for the International Banking House of Brown Brothers in 1909 to 1912. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests in 1916. It was during those years I had a swell racket. this has been turned into a meme, and it's wrong. So let's talk about what he did. So I'm going to take this, conflict by conflict, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with Cuba because he mentions Cuba. So Cuba, he got to Cuba I think towards the end of 1898 as the fighting was dying down. So what was Cuba about? Cuba was there to stop the genocide. That's why we intervened to stop the genocide and to stop the international disorder that was being caused by the genocide by the Spanish government. Okay, and there is a long-held principle that you can step in to stop a tyrant from destroying their own people. And this principle has its roots all the way back in the school of Salamanca. So we were implementing this principle, which came to us through the various writers who were lawyers and philosophers dealing with international law and the law of nations. And we took that principle and we applied it to Cuba, and we protected those people. So that debunks one of his claims right there. So now let's go to Nicaragua. Okay. Again, we're dealing with situations here where there were dictators in these countries or the social order had broken down. And in general, what we did is we stepped in to protect lives and investments. Yes, that's right. But we also helped to fix that disorder. And a country has a right to protect the lives of its citizens and the investments of its companies. We have that right. And furthermore, we took it upon ourselves to help these countries to gain stability, to build a civic or a civil society. Well, he doesn't talk about that. Okay. All right. So Nicaragua. Okay. So what happened? 1909 to 1912 was a period of some problems. You had a dictator by the name of Zelaya. He came in as a progressive, then he became a nationalist. Sound familiar? And he became somebody who confiscated property, exercised piracy, excessive taxes. He got more power. He ruined businesses. He was talking about a Central American republic, which would have destabilized the region. There was talk about the Japanese and the Germans actually helping him in that regard. And so this was not a good idea for the world order. This is not a good idea for peace, for the community of nations, for the people of those countries. And so what we did is we acted to protect our people and also to protect our investments. And what we also propounded was the idea, which was found in something called the Tobar Doctrine from 1907, and that was basically by 1912, it was a policy that we were promoting in Central America that there would be no violent revolutionary means of changing governments. We weren't going to allow that. And so we worked with the Nicaraguan leadership to help that happen. Zelaya eventually left the country because he was just destroying it. And so what you had then is you had our presence there to bring peace and order back to the country and help a government that was no longer being rapacious and tyrannical in taking the property not just of its own people but of foreign countries like the United States. And yeah, the United States had business interests there, but we also had the expertise and we put in the investment for those business interests and that was helping the country. And so when that was being jeopardized by the government, we defended that, and that in turn defended and helped the Nicaraguan people and the people of Central and Latin America. Okay, so let's go next to Mexico. This is an interesting one, okay? Mexico had one dictator after another. The one they had for the longest time, about 35 years, was Porfirio Diaz, and he reigned until about 1910. And then, there were elections and revolutions, and the revolution confiscated U.S. property of the oil companies and the values of their concessions. If they didn't outright confiscate it, the actions of the revolutionary government in passing various laws or constitution effectively nullified, weakened, lessened the investment of the American oil companies. We had the expertise, we had the ability to go in there and drill for oil and benefit, the people from Mexico. So what happened is that there was a situation where the United States went in to protect our citizens. And we understood that there were weapons that were headed to Tampico, that these weapons were going to be used in the revolution, and that Huerta, who had overthrown Madero, Huerta was there illegally because he had overthrown Madero because Madero had been elected. There was going to be even a greater revolution against Huerta and others. So we went in and stopped the shipment of the guns and protected our own people. Now, what's of note is a lot of people think the oil companies told the U.S. what to do. Well, that's not true. So, what you had in the diaries of William Jennings Bryan, who was Secretary of State from 1913 to 1915, and Robert Lansing from 1915 to 1920, you have their discussion of the situation in Mexico. And these guys were not laying down for the oil companies, but they wanted what was fair for the oil companies, but they also wanted the Mexicans to elect and their leaders and not overthrow their leaders and have all these revolts and revolutions. And so it's very interesting. In Bryan's diary, he says, in dealing with the Mexican situation, we had a number of important questions to consider. The first was whether Huerta should be recognized. A great deal of pressure was brought to bear on the administration by American business interests in Mexico, and much of my time during the first few months was occupied in hearing delegations which came to urge Huerta's recognition. None of them attempted to defend either the character of the man or the methods by which he had secured his office. The pleas were all along the same line and ran in substance as this: we do not care to say anything about Huerta, nor about the way in which he obtained office, but a strong man is necessary to preserve order in Mexico. He's the only strong man in sight. If the United States recognizes him, he can get money, and with money, he can put down the insurrection. And so this is what Bryan said. And what Bryan said is, he said, no, we have to do things the right way. And so we have to recognize that it's important for the Mexican people have their leadership elected and that they have a government which functions for them, and that this government is not a tyrannical government. This has been the policy of America all throughout the world. Now let's go to Haiti. In Haiti in 1915, there was civil unrest. The president got lynched by the Haitians. Instability. The Germans were talking about getting involved, and this is 1915. So this is during World War One. And so the United States went into Haiti to bring order. And Smedley Butler, was the guy who was in charge of the Haitian gendarmerie or the police forces, and he did a good job. He brought order in that society where it just simply fell apart. And so there we are helping our neighbor. And then, he says, well, it's there to protect our investments. Well, that's part of it too, sure. But you have internal problems that we fixed so as to keep this from spreading further, and to keep it from destroying what we have invested in there, and in return harming the people of Haiti. Because business is good. It is a good thing. It's work. It is how we cooperate in creation. Okay, and that's what Americans did. We took our expertise, we took our entrepreneurial skills, we went to other countries, and we helped to achieve, to fulfill this mandate of providential destination, of bringing the fruits from the land out for all of humanity to benefit from. This is what we did in Haiti, what we did in Mexico, what we're doing in Nicaragua, and what we did in the Dominican Republic. Okay, again, we brought order, we brought infrastructure, and we stopped the political chaos and the threats of a German intervention, which would have been disastrous. So it would have spread the world war even further around the world. So what we did with all of these things is it's really not as Smedley Butler says. I mean, Smedley Butler said, well, the only reason we should fight wars, and I'm paraphrasing him, is to defend our borders and to defend freedom. Well, yeah, those are two very good reasons to fight wars, but they're not the only reason. You have to defend the right order. Now, an essential part of the right order are those four things I've been talking to you about incessantly. It is the primacy of the person, which is part of his idea of democracy and freedom. It's the primacy of the right order in the community of states or community of nations, the rule of law, and that peace is the ultimate objective. We do not go and wage wars for property, for control. Everything I just told you about was our response to the situation there. And as a result of our intervention in Latin America, the Latin American countries adopted a principle that says we're not going to recognize any country if there's a violent overthrow. In other words, you got to have elections and you got to build a civil society or a civic society. Okay, that's what we did with Mexico. That was an idea that we pushed throughout and we advocated for all throughout Latin America. And I'll tell you something else. American lawyers were talking with the Latin American lawyers too. I mean, Latin American, South American lawyers. We were meeting on a regular basis. Elihu Root, 120 years ago, went to Buenos Aires and met with the lawyers in Latin and South America about building means to resolve disputes peacefully. And that's what you do in civil societies, in civic societies. You work things out and you resolve disputes peacefully, but you operate from good faith and goodwill and with sincerity. We don't have good faith and goodwill right now in our country. We don't have that. The Kevin Roberts, the Trumps, the GOP leadership, for the most part, and all those forces that are arrayed with them, they don't have good faith and goodwill. They don't want to resolve anything. They want power. And it's a very dangerous situation because America has always gotten along with people working together to make things happen. We may be different parties, we have a different way of looking at it, but we have an election, somebody wins, somebody loses. This is what we did in building right order throughout the community of nations. We went in, we helped those domestic societies right order themselves. Stop the shooting, stop the bloodshed, build the institutions, do away with tyrants, obey the laws, the rule of law, recognize and help the person. That's what we did. And we took this idea beyond Latin America and South America, and we took it over to Europe. We took these ideas over there, and from there to the world. Europe couldn't do it. All the Latin and so-called Christian, all the Catholic and so-called Christian countries couldn't do it. The nationalist countries couldn't do it, but America could, and we did. And so, I think I've debunked Smedley. So next time you see a meme from Smedley Butler, remember this talk. Now I'm supposed to say, like the talk and subscribe. I keep forgetting to do that. Thank you.